So good morning all. So my name is Calvin. I will handle on the part 5 until part 7. So the part 5 actually is talk about the standard e-invoice, which is on the slide 62. Okay. So we have 8 types of e-invoice documents. So the first one actually is invoice, credit note, debit note, refund note, and then self-bill for invoice, credit note, self-bill for debit notes, and also refund notes. So in Autocount actually, for the invoice, credit note, and debit notes, you will submit to LHDN portal. So for refund note, if you create, actually is for the account entries only. So it doesn't submit any informations up to LHDN, because why they do so? If you create an invoice, after that you issue a credit note. Credit notes already deducted from the system, and then it uploaded the record how much amount need to deduct from the LHDN. So if Autocount, they compulsory the refund notes to upload again. When you're doing this refund notes at account entries, you will deduct twice lah. So this is the reason why Autocount on refund notes, it doesn't submit anything to LHDN. So the one that it submit is only 7 types. The refund notes under Autocount, it doesn't submit anything. So next, actually, we will talk about the sample of creating the standard e-invoice. So usually we will create invoice, and then how we do so. So the first thing, actually, we will create the invoice, a new invoice. So we will create a new invoice. So you will just need to select adapter. The adapter usually you already maintain with the tax entity lah, which just now Mr. Ho go through before. So once you selected the adapter, you may just proceed accordingly. You just add in the items that the customer purchased. After that, you just click approve. So if you can see the approve buttons, means you have the access right to directly create and submit the invoice to LHDN. So you click approve means this documents is directly submitting to LHDN system. So once submitted, it will feedback with the UUID, which means this record has been submitted into LHDN. So if we refer back to the MyPax portal, so we will straight away show the documents already listed inside the My Invoice portal. So the process is usually quite straightforward. So you just create the invoice accordingly to current practice. So another method, if you check through the invoice listing from here, you can see all the informations are either this documents status e-invoice when it's submitted to the AIP, and the UUID. If you're facing any error which you submit, maybe is the PIN number is incorrect, it will appear with the error message here, which you can see, and then amend accordingly. So usually when you print out, you must make sure that the UUID is already created, and then you only do the print out. Because sometimes actually the response actually according to LHDN, actually once you submit the information to LHDN, they will provide you the UUID within 2 seconds. So if within 2 seconds, usually when you create the documents, the UUID might not yet created inside the system. So once it's retrieved back, then you only preview and print out. So when you preview, the documents already have the UUID. For sure, when you preview the invoice, on the bottom, you will have a QR code, which is for your client to scan to validate it. This is a compulsory QR which you need to input inside the invoice. So for sure now, on your invoice, you doesn't have this QR. So when you do the version upgrade, usually we will input this QR into your invoice documents. Of course, first thing you need to ensure that your invoice pattern format, you need to find a place to input this QR inside your invoice format. Because some actually, I believe that some invoice actually packed with a lot of information. So you must need to make sure that currently where exactly you need to input this QR. So this is compulsory by LHDN lah. So if you scan the QR, when the clients receive the invoice, right? When they scan the QR, they straight away actually they will receive these informations that confirm that this is the information amount, buyers, everything, date and times, which customer can see lah. So from the invoice listing, if you view the documents, right, you can see a lot of tab here. They have a tab which is the e-invoice info. So e-invoice info, actually you have a validation link. This is the link that indicate the QR. So if I paste it on the web page, right, it will show the things that we see just now. This is the buyers that will see this kind of info lah. So next, actually, we will proceed according to the slide 69. 69 actually is talk about the approval flow. So approval flow, just now, my colleague already mentions that you can enable these functions on, like example, PO or others documents. But invoice, actually, for sure, it will have an approval workflow. So if I create a documents, if I save it as a draft, so under draft, actually, I have the options to approve it directly, which so just now I approved directly. So it was directly submit to LHDN. So, and then it will validate back to our Autocount system. So under draft, you can directly submit for approval. If that user that log into the account, it doesn't have the approval to directly approve it, then they can submit for approval. So once you submit for approval, the user will need to wait for the management who can do the to approve this invoice into LHDN. So that you will submit the information to LHDN. So any draft documents that created doesn't submit for approval, it will expire according to the time that you set inside the tools option just now. So just now actually got mentions about that if under tools, option just now, actually we have approval flow. So approval flow, actually you have indications how many days actually you need to indicate here. So if more than this date, your automatic under expired. So we have a tab actually all draft. If you save any documents that under draft, it will fall under this tab. If it's already expired, then it will under this tab. Anything that pending for approval, it will under this awaiting approval. So approve, you can according to approve to see the listing. So if anything documents that you have been submitted for approval and then been submitted to LHDN as well, if you do the void, it will directly submit the void into the LHDN as well. So the LHDN will void the transactions. So this is the workflow. The next thing actually how you enable the approval workflow. So you need to go to tools, under options, and then under the general category, they have an approval workflow. So by default, actually, this one, usually we doesn't tick it all. So you just, the one that compulsory by the system is invoice, credit notes, debit notes, and also the self-bill. So you will see the approval bar that under invoice, credit note, debit notes, and self-bill listing. Others actually, if you needed, you may tick so that it will enable that approval workflow under that documents listing. So you may input, change the date accordingly, how many days you want to remain the draft inside your listing. So for now, just now, actually, I got mentioned about any document that's submitted but pending for approval, actually under the auto count, under general settings and access right maintenance, right, you can maintain who have the access right to approve the invoice or either the credit notes or either the debit notes. So this is the access you need to configure for now. If your management level have different department and that departments, when they create invoice, you need them to escalate to another department to do the approval, then you need to start to assign accordingly. If after 72 hours actually you can't void, you need to do the credit note to do the adjustment. So I show you one time how to assign. So under general maintenance, actually you can go to access right maintenance, and then on the search bar you just tap, and then you may tap approve. You key in the keywords approve, and then click search. Click search button. So it will appear with approve indications, approve invoice, then you may tick and then assign accordingly to which user group. Example, maybe account actually they have the access right to submit the invoice and then directly approve it. Then you may assign it according to the user group, which is it have two users stick together. The one user means is a individual user access right. Yes, because you create invoice, actually the documents actually they will directly pump into the account entry as well. So any credit notes actually you created, you also pump into account entry. So on the approval workflow, you can view the document status change log as well. So example, just now we have a few sample. So you just go to the invoice listing and then you do a right click. You will see a view document status change log. Click it in, then you will see the change log maybe is from draft directly to approve, and it will listed out everything. It will listed out everything that the document go through. If you create CN and DN, it directly submit to LHDN as well. It will have a approve buttons if depends on the user whether have the access right lah. Because just now actually under the tools options on the approval workflow, you can see the credit note and debit notes, actually the approval workflow actually is applied, is compulsory apply on this 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 documents. So I will show you on the sample on if am the billing department and I doesn't have any approval to approve the documents. So I will log in to my billing user ID, which I doesn't have the access. I only have the access to do the invoice and I submit for approval. So if I click invoice and then I try to click create a document. So you will see my options will have save as draft and then submit for approval only. So if I click submit for approval, the documents actually it will automatic pending for awaiting approval under the status. So if I have the access right to approve, which is admin, if I have the access right to approve, I right click, I will straight away I will able to see how many awaiting approval. I will able to monitor that if this is the thing that I review through and approve, you may just tick and then tick approve and then click start. So once approved, it will automatic under approved status, under approved status. The user actually directly can approve if they have the access to approve the invoice. So it doesn't go through the submit for approval. So the durations that return the validations info from IRBM actually is roughly, according to their web page, actually is roughly within 2 seconds. Within 2 seconds. So this is the one I showed you just now. If the billing actually, if they create it, and then they can submit for approval. So once they submitted, it will pending for approve. If you have the access right to approve it, then you can just click the approve. So once you created the documents, if the documents that haven't submit and is under draft, it will have a watermark as draft. So let me show you. Example, if I create a document, if I save it as draft, so if I preview these documents, it will have a watermark draft, which indicate this is not a complete document yet. So this is the process just now. I've been mentioned that if once the documents is under draft, you have the options to tick and then submit for approval. Submit for approval. So the method one actually we will teach you how to do the single approval. This is the one that we done it just now. So you can just preview the documents and do the approval accordingly. Then the method two actually is batch approve e-invoice. If I have multiple, like just now I show you, if I have 3 invoice or 4 invoice that under pending for approval, I can check all and then click approve in one go. This apply to those company which within 1 day they actually create quite a lot of invoice, and then they will need to check through and then they will need to approve it in one go. So they may go to the awaiting approval tab and then check all and then click the approve directly. and then just click the start. It will automatically approve the documents. The customer, according to LHDN, actually the customer have the right to reject, but the final decisions actually will fall back to the supplier, the seller. So once if the documents has been submitted under approved, and then if we submitted to the LHDN, it will it will show out UUID. So I will show you a sample if currently if I do submissions on e-invoice, which has been validated. If I do the cancellations, it will ask me to input the cancel result, the reason for me to cancel. Example, these documents, I can click view, and then if I view, if I have the access to void, right, you click the void button, and then you click yes. When I click yes, it will ask you to input the reason. Then you just click OK. The reason it will directly submit to LHDN as well. And then this status, it will stated as cancel. It will stated as cancel. If I view back to the LHDN portal, right, will stated as cancel as well. Let me see which document is this. So you will see once I submitted through the auto count for void, then it was stated with the reason which we key in just now into an auto count, and then the document actually is cancel. It says cancel. The duration is actually within 72 hours. If the customer reject, so far we tested actually, if the customer reject, they will have a submissions on into the LHDN portal. But on the document, it doesn't cancel. Even the customer requests to reject the documents, the final decisions is still go back to the seller. So seller have to communicate with the customer on the rejection. So this is the void or cancel invoice. So businesses only can reject or request cancellations within the 72 hours. So just now actually we go through is on invoice document. So example, if currently you are using the cash sales documents. So for cash sales documents, actually you can do for submitting of e-invoice as well. The process actually is the same. You just go to the cash sale document, and then you can select your customer. After that, add in the items and click the payment accordingly. So once I already click the payments, if I go back through my case sales listing, you will see it will have a UUID as well. So you will have a QR code indicate on the documents. So the concept actually is applied on invoice, is the same apply to cash sale as well. So if you ask if I want to create a credit note, how do I create? The concept same as cash sale. If I go to credit note, I will select my customer. Then you just click approve if you have the right to approve. So on the credit note listing, actually, you have the UUID indications as well. As long as you submit, you will automatically pass the info to LHDN. So LHDN actually will have these documents that you have created a credit note for this customer. So on LHDN, you will see you will have a credit note documents created accordingly. So for cash sale, actually, if the customer doesn't need e-invoice, if you create, you may just create as normally. Only those with TIN number, tax entity, you will submit as e-invoice. So for a random customer walk-in customer, if I create, I can create a debtor. I can create a debtor as a random debtor. And then on the debtor profile, right, a random debtor profile, you double click in, you can tick this as cash sale debtor. So you may just tick it. This is new features on the latest versions. So you just tick it to indicate this is the cash sale debtor. After that, when we create a cash sale for this customer, so you may change accordingly the name, and then insert, and then sell it. So once I submitted the documents, right, you will see that document, it doesn't submit any e-invoice. So this is the documents that will under the consolidate documents when you do it on the next month. For those that have UUID, you only will submit it to LHDN directly. Others actually doesn't have any UUID, you will automatically submit as consolidate. For the invoice layout, you only need to show the QR and also the TIN numbers. It doesn't need to appear everything that compulsory by the 55 items. If the invoice is under invalid in status, means that documents actually it doesn't submit to LHDN. So to answer your questions, actually, example, maybe this customer just now, it doesn't request for the e-invoice. And then afterward, they come back, actually, hey, can you provide me the e-invoice for this sales? You can go back to that cash sale, you click edit, and then you click the TIN is not specified to insert the customer informations. So you must maintain the TIN number inside the tax entity first for the client's info, and then click OK. So if I click the payment again to tender it in, so you will see it will trigger the update into the e-invoice. Then it's straight away submitted to the customer. This is for the case scenario you mentioned. If the customer, they purchase from you and then they doesn't inform that they need a e-invoice. After they purchase and then afterward they come back again and then, hey, these documents whether can supply me the e-invoice so that I can claim. Then this is the method. You go and edit and then input back the TIN number into the customer profile. So this is the one we go through just now. So once you submitted, you will come out with the UUID status, whether it's valid. If the ones that doesn't show up with any status on UUID, usually that document actually is a consolidated document. So for credit notes, the process is the same as well. Once you approve, it will automatically submit to LHDN. It will submit to LHDN. So even for debit note, the concept is the same. The flow is the same. So once you created that documents, you will automatic under approved status with UUID. So for the additional info actually on the listing, actually you can track according to the document numberings and then the e-invoice status. So the e-invoice status actually, if you have 70 invoice document numberings, and then the status might be approved or either is under void, it will indicate under the e-invoice status. Because the others informations actually they directly submit to the LHDNs as well. You just now actually got classification code, everything actually the governments already have the info because upon submitting you can't see it visually. We doesn't need to display it all out. On the invoice actually the things that you need to display to the customer actually is the TIN and the QR. So got time limit for changes. Usually if you create and then that customer within that month, they need to come back to inform that you need they need the in-invoice documents. If after a month, actually you can't within the month. For the hardware building supply, because you doesn't take the consolidate just now under the two options. So all the documents that you create, it confirm it will submit directly to the LHDN. So for construction materials, actually, if you sell this, you doesn't take this. So the additional info that you guys will need to know actually is the common thing. So if for government, they walk into your store, they intend to purchase from your store. So the government actually they have a government thing. So this is the thing where you will need to use. And then general things actually is for those that they only know their IC, but they forgot their own TIN number. Then you may use the IC and then the general TIN to submit the e-invoice for the consumer. So they have foreign TINs. This is the foreign TINs if you buy if your customer is a foreign customer, so upon create the tax entity, you already indicate the buyers under this EI 9020. If the supplier that supply you is a foreign supplier, then when you create the sales bill, you automatically indicate with EI 9030. So this is the general theme is for the e-invoice Malaysian, where individually only provide the my card. And then the 20 indicate is for the foreign buyer, and then the buyer, and then the 30 indicate supplier, foreign supplier. And then for governments, actually will be 40. If they purchase it on 31st of December and they come back on 1st of January, usually will be no. So on the tax entity, you can indicate whether this tax entity is a local business or a foreign business. So if I go to the tax entity, tax entity maintenance, right? If I create a new tax entity, example, this actually is for my foreign supplier. So you need to select this, is it a local business or a foreign business? If you click to foreign business, you will come up with this to show you that notice is required. You may leave it blank because if you create self-bill, this is the code you will automatically fill in, submit to LHDN. If this is the buyer, your customer is a foreign buyer, then no TIN I require. When you submit the invoice to LHDN, the LHDN actually automatically will receive this TIN number. TIN number. So example, if I create a foreign business, this is my supplier, this is my supplier, or this is my buyer. And then I want to export my items to this foreign buyer. So I already have the tax entity for my foreign buyer. Then when I create the invoice, I will select the foreign buyer profile. Then I will add in the items. So when I approve it, it will submit to LHDN. It will submit to LHDN. So on LHDN portal, you will able to see the TIN number for these documents, right? It will start with 20, which is for foreign buyer. So for export, if you have the documents like K1 form or K2 forms, you need to fill in on the standard, on the invoice documents upon you create. So you will have the tab, which is an annexure, and then you just fill in the required information inside here when you create the documents. So for government sales, actually same as well. You need to make sure that your tax entity you maintain in, you just change the category from individual, business, or either government. So if government, you just put under government. So government actually doesn't require anything number lah. So you need to require to fill in their business registration number and then all the information that under listed asterisk in red. So you save it. So when you submit any e-invoice for government buyer, right, the TIN number, it will automatically appear with government TIN number, which is 440. If the e-invoice been submitted and then you share to your customer, even the customer doesn't go and view it, validate it, according to HDN actually, it will automatically approve it, validate it by itself. So this is the government category. If you create for government, if your customer is a government sector. So the next one actually we go to part 6, which is the consolidated e-invoice. Just now actually we mentioned about the standard e-invoice, which the customer require for claims from governments, then they will need to submit to LHDN as standard invoice. For those that doesn't need, is a normal customer walk in and then they just purchase the things from you, you will fall under consolidated e-invoice. So consolidated e-invoice actually you no need to do anything. You just create your debtor and then if you doesn't assign any debtor tax entity inside, it actually it will issue as a normal invoice. So it covers cash invoice, cash sale, credit note, and debit note. So remember, this is the things that the industrial debt doesn't allow for consolidated e-invoice lah. Automotive, aviations, luxury goods and jewelries, constructions, wholesaler, retailer, license betting and gaming, and payment to agents, dealer, and distributor. So upon setup, you must ensure that your business, whether it allowed to consolidate or not to allow to create consolidated invoice lah. So as Mr. Ho mentioned before, since they have an interim relaxation period, so usually we untick this so that you can make sure that your staff can go through a correct step. Even you make a mistake within the 6 months, at least they doesn't have any penalties or any penalized from the LHDN lah. So how we do the self-bill or either the consolidated invoice? Consolidated invoice actually we will need to go to the e-invoice and then consolidate e-invoice, click it in, then you just click new. When you click new, you will have a dead range for you to generate. So you have the options to include either invoice, cash sale, credit note, debit note, or POS. You click generate, you automatically generate all the non-e-invoice documents. You click save. If I view it, so it will automatically retrieve out those that is normal invoice. The step actually is quite straightforward. You just go to e-invoice, consolidate e-invoice, and then you just click new, input the date, and then inquiry to generate out the report. So as you can see, if between the numbering 43 and 44, actually this is the consolidated invoice, and then until 46, 45 until 47 is a standard e-invoice. So that's why standard e-invoice, it doesn't include inside consolidate. So it will skip the number and then start with 48. This is normal. This is normal, just for your info. So you just click generate. The standard e-invoice you will not include. Then you will have this document for you to preview. If you preview it, you will have a QR code which you can scan as well. So this is consolidated e-invoice. So if for counter, actually, if you have documents, if you have sales that is not standard e-invoice, and then you will fall under consolidate. So consolidate, you just click new to include this POS. So remember the consolidated documents, you need to do it every month, or you need to do it on the following month within the 7 days. So the next part actually on part 7 is Autocount self-bill. So Autocount self-bill actually, you only do self-bill when you under this category. Under this category, if you buy the stock from foreign supplier, which they doesn't have the e-invoicing, then you may do self-bill. So this is the condition state when you can do self-bill. If not fall under these conditions, you are not allowed to do self-bill by your own. If you do, then the LHDN might track and then they might penalize you lah. So how you do the self-bill e-invoice? You go to the e-invoice self-bill and then you just click new. So when you click new, you can copy from purchase invoice or either copy from AI invoice credit notes or either copy from cash book. Why it have a copy from cash book or purchase invoice? Because just now actually we got mentioned that if I buy the stock from foreign supplier and they doesn't have any e-invoice which can provide to us. So of course we can copy, we will need to do self-bill. So that's why the copy from purchase invoice it appear here. And then copy from cash book actually is some scenario like maybe you make a rent the commission payment to your staff and then you need to copy it from cash book. So example, if I copy from purchase invoice, I take the documents. This is my foreign company. I click OK. Your automatic pump in, which is this is a Singapore supplier. So you can see the TIN number. It will automatically appear with 330. Appear with 30. So upon you copy into this self-bill, remember the classification code on your item on this self-bill, you need to make sure it on the correct selections, is on the correct selections. By default, every time you copy into this from other documents is will default under 036. So if this is payment to agent, then you need to make sure that you select the correct one before you do the approval. So on the document types, actually, you have the options whether this is a self-bill invoice or self-bill credit note or self-bill debit note or either a refund note. So you click approve, then you will directly submit to LHDN pending for result. Then once you feedback with the UUID, then you will stated the UUID here. For self-bill, actually, you need to submit on the following next month and on within that next month. So on self-bill, actually, once you submit, you will automatically appear with the UUID. Then this is the step just now we go through. Method 1, when you create new, and then you can just manually key in or copy from cash book or either purchase invoice or AR credit note. So you have an option to copy. And then if you are directly under the invoice, purchase invoice, listing or cash book, right? This is another method which you can under purchase invoice. If this is your foreign supplier, you can just right click and then copy to new self-bill. This is another options. Example, maybe from cash book entry. This is for commission payout. And then if I right click, you can copy to new self-bill. Those that documents have been self-bill, you automatically indicate with the self-bill document number. So this is for cash book. And then this is the document type when you need to do selections. Either is invoice, credit note, debit note, or refund note. And then when you pay for the rentals, when you select the debtor, you will automatically pay into that debtor TIN number. So this is for foreign supplier, you automatically appear with the foreign TINs. So classification code, which is I got mentioned just now, make sure you need to update your classification code after posting from another document, as you automatically revert back to 036. So you need to make sure the selections before you submit is the correct classification code. So once you already do the self-bill on the document listing, either purchase invoice or cash book, right? You will appear with the self-bill document, indicate this has been self-bill under which document numbering. So for self-bill example, maybe you buy the goods from supplier. So you need to make sure upon you key in the self-bill, you need to include the annexure as well. Just now, actually, we got mentions about invoice. If you supply goods to your foreign buyer, you need to input the annexures, the custom documents inside the annexures tab. So the same as well, on the self-bill, you need to indicate this as well. You need to indicate it under annexures and then input the required information by custom before you submit this self-bill. So after you create the self-bill, you will need to share it to your supplier. You will need to share it to the supplier. So remember to preview it and then send it to your supplier. So this is the conditions that stated by the LHDN. You must share it to your supplier. Even they doesn't go and validate it or they doesn't view it, you just share it to your customer since it's a rules by the LHDN. So how you share it, you actually can just preview or either print and then preview, and then this is the things concept same like standard e-invoice. You will have a QR for your supplier to scan to do the validations. So this is the chapter for the self-bill. So we've been go through on self-bill and then consolidate and then standard e-invoice. The next thing actually we will step into is on counter POS. On counter POS, how we handling the e-invoice. If your business you got using POS counter, then this is the thing you will need to learn as well. So the first thing actually before we proceed to the counter layout, on the back end actually you will need to do some configurations first. So first thing, you need to go to the point of sale, maintenance, under terminal settings. You will have a terminal setting maintenance. So you just click edit, and then you will have the terminal setting layout. You navigate to the tab layout and then tick the e-invoice. So let me show you on the system. So you go to point of sale, maintenance, terminal setting maintenance, and then after that, click edit. Under text tab, tick this e-invoice, and then input the date when is the start date of the e-invoice. The email is compulsory to input. This is for you to, for the system, when they submit the e-invoice, the AIP server by Autocount, it will send the e-invoice using this email to your buyer. So the setting actually, if your email, you have your own email by your company, then you may consult your IT department. If for Gmail one, you may follow this process, input this, and then the port number, and then tick this, input the email address account. The password actually is not the login password email lah. This one actually you will need to generate it from the Google account, which is under your Gmail account. You go to manage Google account, and then on this interface, you just type app password, look for this, click it in. Click in, it will ask you to insert the app's name. So my one actually I put it as e-invoice post lah. So once you input with the name, you just click create, you will generate a key for you. This is the key that you need to input, copy and paste into this password box. So after you fill in, then you click testing lah to send an email. If everything is correct, then you will able to send an email to your email address. So you just click OK, then this is the thing you need to maintain at back end. If your self-bill actually you are purchased the goods from China actually because you already created input the infos on your purchase invoice, because purchase invoice have a column which for you to input the supplier invoice number. So once you already insert enable, then this is the thing that the customer will receive if you have a counter post sales which submit an e-invoice. Customer will receive the e-invoice documents PDF file through the email address that you input. So I will show you on how to do the submitting of e-invoice through counter. So this is our counter POS. Example, the customer purchased from you, and then they require standard e-invoice. So the process for cashier is the same as well. Tender the payment. Before you click the OK, click this customer informations to fill in the customer, TIN number, IC number, and then their informations for direct submit to LHDN. Click this customer informations and then do the selections. Is it to an individual, business, or government? If individual, put it in, then input the informations. If previously you already fill in these customer informations and then the customer has been agreed to share this info to the AIP server with other user, then actually you just only need to get their IC number and phone number. Let me show you. Example, this customer. is an existing customer which previously already purchased before and agree to share the info to AIP server, so that next time they purchase, they actually directly can retrieve the info. So I will just input the IC number, then with phone number, you will click this magnifying glass. You will try to search this information from the AIP server. Once I click, it will automatically log with the information, customer informations, with the customer informations. If those that doesn't appear inside after you click this, means they doesn't, they never share the info before. So you have to get the IC number, you key in accordingly, and then click submit e-invoice. If I click OK, then I tender the payment. If I go to find bill, I will check this. Let me do again. So you will see the documents on here. This document which is submitted just now, you will validate and then come out with a UUID. So then you may print it out for the customer. So this is the things that you will see that you supply to the customer. So for those that you already submitted and then validated by the LHDN, you will come out with a QR code. This is the QR which is compulsory to display on the receipt as well, So this is a direct submit. This is direct submit documents. So on the find bill listing, actually, you have a refresh e-invoice button, which you can click to refresh the status. Because sometimes once submitted, the LHDN doesn't reply directly. So it might take sometimes a few seconds. After a few seconds, usually it will automatically change to valid. If you want to refresh it by your own, you may click it. You may click this to trigger the refresh button. So once you render valid, the QR will directly appear. Andrew, the one that after batch e-invoice and then you want to send it in one go, is it? Maybe this one later on you text office, our S office to guide you on the steps. So just now we've been go through on direct submit e-invoice. Direct submit e-invoice. So you just add in the item and then click the customer information button and then fill in the informations, the TIN number, the business registration number. If for business, actually, these two are compulsory, which you need to key in. You must need to ensure that you key in the correct TIN number and business registration number for business, or else actually you are facing the issues like the TIN number is incorrect, then the status will be under invalid. So you fill in the compulsory informations and then tick the submit e-invoice, click OK. Once you click OK, then you will automatically if you got tick the agree to share the customer informations, then you will receive an email for this customer email. They will need to validate this email to confirm that they agree to share their info to the AIP. So this is the reason why afterward the customer come back again. You just need to input their TIN number, registration number, and phone number, right? You click the search button, it will straight away retrieve out their informations. So this is the thing that the customer will receive. This is the normal receipt which doesn't have the standard e-invoice. And then the one that submitted the standard e-invoice, you will have a QR code. And the concept is the same as well. When they scan the QR code, then it will divert them to the My Invoice portal with the informations. So example, maybe the customer after they purchase, they only request it afterward. Let me show you the sample. Example, currently the customer, they just purchased the item from you. But afterward, maybe afternoon or evening, they come back again. Then, can I request for e-invoice for the document that I purchased just now? Then, the cashier actually will need to go to the Find Bill, click search button, look for that receipt. Example, this is the receipt. You can see the status. Is it is a direct submit? No means no valid, means no e-invoice issue out. So if you want to issue the e-invoice afterward, the customer come back, highlight this document, click the submit e-invoice, then fill in the customer informations. Then tick the submit e-invoice, click OK. Then it will trigger the submission to the LHDN portal. And you will revert with the UUID once it's been submitted. So this is the process, how you handle the customer after they come back. Click Find Bill, select the documents, and then click the Submit e-invoice, fill in the informations. So the third method actually is print QR submissions. So the one just now we done through before is a direct submit, which is directly is a default feature inside Autocount for e-invoice feature. So for the QR submissions, this is a subscription fee needed. It charged by yearly. You may consult our office on this if your counter need the QR feature, which you will directly print out with a QR and then let the customer to scan and fill in the information at counter at their phone without jamming the counter. So let me show you how to do the QR. Example, the customer purchased this item. We tender accordingly. So if we doesn't use the customer information to submit, direct submit, if we take this print QR, if we click OK, it will straight away generate out a QR. This is a QR for the clients to scan, and then it will come out with a form for them to fill in their informations, So after they scan the QR, right, then this is the thing, it will appear on the screen. They will need to fill in their names, email address, and then their TIN number, everything. Once they already fill in, they submitted to the AIP and has been validated on LHDN system, they will receive an email. If you under more function, you will have an e-invoice monitor. This is the thing where you can monitor if I have a QR, or I have e-invoice submissions, you can see the status here. So once the customer already fill in the form, right, the QR information form, they will receive an email on their email, which with the document numbering. If I tap it in, it will come up with this, which for them to scan, to validate these documents. So remember, the QR actually is a yearly fee subscription. So you may consult our office on the subscription fee. For basic, by default, actually, you can use it without the QR. So just need to go through using the customer information to direct submit the e-invoice if the customer is required standard e-invoice document. So the last part on the final case study, I will pass back to Mr. Hall on this. So before this, any questions on this, on the post counter or consolidate or either the standard e-invoice? Hmm.
Okay, so we will be having our last topic is on the final case study. So these are some of the questions or issue that encountered by our customers when they are using e-invoice in Autocount. So normally the error showing here is when we submit e-invoice, we submit our invoice, it's shown submit document error 403 forbidden. Normally this error is caused by your intermediary who doesn't give access right. You doesn't give the full access right to your Autocount to submit, to help you to submit the document, to cancel the documents. Okay, so you just give the access right inside your My Invoice portal, then you come back to your Autocount to resubmit again the e-invoice, then normally it will be able to submit to valid. Okay, so the second case study is the TIN number and registration number does not match. So if the error message shown here, so normally how you solve this is the TIN number and the registration number, you need to come back to your tax entity maintenance there. You need to make sure the TIN number, it doesn't have space, it doesn't have spacing, the digit is 11 digit, and then the business registration number is the new business registration number. It's not the old one. Okay, so make sure these two are correct, and then you save, then you try to resubmit again the e-invoice. Okay, so the third case study is on the issuance debt is too old from the document debt. So this is caused by, because for example, we save a draft invoice at 1st of November, but we save as draft and then wait until today is 6th of November. Okay, so it will not be able to submit is because the document debt and the e-invoice issue debt is it has a gap, is too long. Okay, so the normal e-invoice submission date is within 72 hours. You can still submit, but if it exceeds 72 hours, we will need to do one more thing is we need to come to this edit tab here under your invoice. Then we need to manually change the e-invoice issue date and time. Okay, we need to change the issue date and time to our current date and time. But this is only the e-invoice issue date time. Your document date and time is still the original date. Okay, the e-invoice issue date is today, but the document date is maybe 1 week or 2 weeks ago. Okay, and it's recommended to be done within the same calendar month lah. Okay, so this is some FAQ. Before the full implementation, if the supplier who does not issue e-invoice, which has not reached the mandatory implementation phase, will IRB accept normal invoice? Okay, so this answer is yes. You can still accept the normal invoice if your customer or if your supplier has not started to implement e-invoice yet. Okay, so you can still accept the normal invoice if your supplier does not implement the e-invoice, does not reach their phase. Okay, for example, they are phase 3, they issue invoice to you, they can still issue normal invoice to you. Okay. So the next FAQ is the tenant substantiate its payment of utility expenses if the utility bills are issued with the landlord's name. Okay, so if the tenant, there are two situations. Okay, so if the landlord is conducting a business, then they will need to give you an e-invoice. But if the landlord is an individual, they are not conducting a business, then you will need to issue a self-bill e-invoice. Then you give the self-bill e-invoice to your landlord. So these are two situations. If your tenants are billing you your rental or your utility expenses. So only these two situations. Okay, and the third informative FAQ is that if the deposit is non-refundable, is the issuance of e-invoice required? Okay, so this, for example, your deposit is non-refundable upon the transactions, then you will need to issue a e-invoice directly to your customer if the deposit is non-refundable. This need to be stated inside your invoice. But if the deposit is refundable, is not non-refundable deposit, then you can still directly receive deposit from them. You no need to issue e-invoice to them yet. Okay, wait until they confirm the order, they confirm the invoice, then you issue the e-invoice to your customer. So there are two situations. Okay, so is an e-invoice required for return of money to buyers? Yes, but not inside Autocount. Inside Autocount, we only do AR, we only do credit note to our customer. If we refund to our customer, we don't need to do a refund note again because we already done it inside our credit note. Okay. So the seventh case study is even the data complies the standard e-invoice, it remains approved and it has not submitted to the IRB for validation. Means the column here are all blank. It doesn't submit, it doesn't approve. Is because of the column here. We tick consolidate e-invoice. Meaning if the relaxation period, like I've mentioned earlier, if the relaxation period we set on 30th of June 2025, then this column, it will be ticked automatically in default. Okay, so meaning every invoice that you create, it will not submit standard e-invoice. If you want to submit standard e-invoice, you need to manually untick this. So like mentioned, we prefer that the relaxation period we do not set. We set the same date as the e-invoice start date. So we submit every invoice as standard e-invoice. We do practice. Okay. So basically that's all for the e-invoice topic. And for now, please allow me to give some advertisement on our Autocount. So basically, Autocount, we have many versions, 1.8, 1.9, 2.0, 2.1, and also 2.2. So for 1.9, absolutely you will need to upgrade it to Autocount 2.2 in order for you to use the e-invoice. For 2.0 and 2.1, you also need to upgrade, but it's only a minor upgrade. It doesn't need to do many things. It can be done with it depends on the workstation and how many PC lah. Normally server can be done within 45 minutes to 1 hours. Okay. So we also have our software support package. So basically, if you bought your license from us, you would have 1 year of free support package. The support package includes 2 free software upgrades and unlimited software support. For example, you have questions regarding any Autocount or any e-invoice questions related to Autocount, you can always ask us. And also, because e-invoice, we need to customize our document format. Inside the software support package, we also includes the document formatting and also mentioned 2 user training for the Autocount intensive course.